been out here to the new equestrian center, but I think it's just fabulous. So I want to support it as much as you do. I would like to just tell you very briefly something that I've never told Verne. I've known Verne all my life, and could we wait just 1 minute until I'm finished? Thank you. I've known Verne all my life, and since I was a boy. Last year I finished my first book, which is called Stop Crying and Listen to the Music. It's a very inspirational story. And my number one boyhood hero happens to be in that book, and he happens to be the great Verne Upmier. And Verne does not know that, and you're going to know it now. So please give him a big round of applause. When you read about him in my book next year, you're going to read about a man that I treasure because he gave such wonderful things to me as a boy that have lived throughout my life. And he's touched my life like he's touched so many thousands of other people. And I want to thank you, Verne. You're just great.
Thank you. Bring Verne back in with his good friend George Barta on a hay rack, and they were going to do a little bit further presentation with a few. I'll tell a few Verne stories while we're waiting. Those two girls have been riding horses in the barn all night. I don't think they got 2 hours sleep. So I went down there and saw that big smile on her face, and she introduced me to the pony, and I was in trouble ever since. Have you had that kind of experience? So we went from that to going up to Verne's to look for a horse. How many of you ever did that? Yeah, okay. So we ended up with a one-eyed Morgan horse that Verne thought was just about right for her. He was about 16 2 hands, but he said, you know, this horse has got a good head on it, it's got good sense. She came up to Kirkwood up here, and we were hoping just to get the horse in and out of the trailer and make life work, and won 2 ribbons on the horse the first show, and Verne set us up pretty good, I think. So I'm sure a lot of you have had stories like Okay, we're going to go ahead and start the presentation. As many of you know, this is Verne Upmier and George Barta, 2 men about town here. We corralled them and got them in here today to say hi to you folks. I want to talk a little about Verne. Above the door in my gymnasium, my hometown, there used to be a sign by a fellow by the name of called Grantland Rice. And the sign said, when the great scorer comes to write against your name, it matters not whether you won or lost, but how you played the game. Do any of you remember that saying? Okay, and I think that that's what Verne kind of epitomizes for me. He was all young athletes. We were always taught to be gentlemen. How do you remember your coaches telling you to be gentlemen out there and so forth? Well, we never really knew quite what a gentleman was, but we worked at it pretty hard. But I've learned a lot from Verne about being a gentleman. And hopefully some of you have heard some of that. I took a quote from the 70s where Verne's lifelong friend George Barta put in it. Maybe some of you remember that story from the newspaper years ago. And George said, there is no doubt in my mind that he has sold more horses and ponies than any other trader in the vicinity, and as a result of this, he has exposed more people to the pleasures of owning a horse than anyone I can think of. So what I want to know is, how many of you got started in horses through Verne? Let's see a show of hands. All All right. How many of you have learned something about horses over the years through Verne? Ah, okay. How many of you bought a horse from Verne? Oh, wow, okay. They're part of the 20,000, I think, Verne. We bought a dozen, so I don't know what that makes us. The story is that for a long time, Verne averaged a sale of a horse a day, and this averages out to around 20,000 in his lifetime, close as we can estimate. Probably had 200 to 300 horses at a time on his place down there. One time, 10 or 15 years ago, I was out there, and Verne was going up to a stable to look at some of the tack that they had. He came back, he bought the whole thing. He bought all the horses, everything in it. Had to take a few trips back with it to get it all back. In the old days at Verne's place, as many of you know, there'd be hundreds of people at the place at a weekend at a time. Many times up to 500 people on a weekend would be out there for different shows, the livery and so forth. Verne told me the other day that things have changed so much. He said years ago that people used to come out from Killian's and Armstrong's and Rockwell and they'd ride in the morning before they'd go to work. People were just into the horses that much more at that time. George Barta quote again that I wanted to give on Verne is, get a little emotion. It says, Verne is my best friend, the best friend I have. He's the most considerate, caring, and sincere person I know. And he figures everyone else is that honest. That's Verne. So Verne, for all the people in the audience, and all those who didn't make it today, we'd like to thank you for the positive impact you've had on the horse world in our lives. And I want to present this plaque to you. And the plaque says, Verne Upmier, Iowa's ultimate horseman, thanks for the memories. A couple more stories, and then I'm going to open this up for people. If you want to come up and tell a quick story or two about Verne, we could go all afternoon. We can't do that because a lot of people came here for some other things, but I'd like to open that up. One story I just have quickly that I'm sure a lot of you guys do. One thing Verne's really an expert at is loading horses. How many of you witnessed that operation? How many of you had a few that wouldn't load? How many of you lied a lot? That's a tough thing, okay? So, we're up there one Sunday morning with that one-eyed Morgan, trying to get him in, and boy, we're going, the show's getting closer, and the sweat's breaking out of me. Verne comes in from church. We've tried everything we can think of. Verne comes up to the horse and says, now get in there. Horse walks right in. We've had that happen a few times with you too, I'm sure. When they see him, they just start paying attention. One time we were coming back, we went down to a dedication. I don't know if you remember this, Verne. We went down to a dedication of a barn with a woman by the name of Betsy Coaster, who's now deceased, who started in horses with Verne. She'd opened a nice new barn south of town. Verne went down for the dedication, and when we came back, we drove by a farm, and he said, you know, I bought some horses there one time. Of course, we take him out for a drive in the country. He bought horses at every farm there was, so you're going to hear a lot of that. But he said, these people had 2 nice quarter horses. And he said he called me out to look at them, and they sold them to me real cheap. He said, I just took my pickup down, clucked to them, and put them in the pickup, and took them home. So he said, I saw the guy a time later at the fair. He said, you know, Verne, he said, my wife darn near killed me. He said, we could never load those horses. And he said, we only sold them to you because we didn't think anybody else could. Now they're the best darn horses around. Verne said, yeah, they were 2 of the nicest horses that he had. I wanted to read a quick story from the paper that was put in years ago, and this is about mule trading. And this is a story about Verne and his dad. It said they used to buy the mules from the road crews and the railroads when they come through, and those mules would be pretty well broke by the time they got them, so they made good mules for farmers. Then they take the mules from the farmers that didn't work so good, sell them to the road crew. Okay? Once the tired road refugees rested while they were easy to sell to local farmers, so it was a good deal all the way around for Harry. That was Verne's dad. Mules are independent beasts, though, and eventually one extracted a measure of revenge for its impending sale of their career in harness. Verne and his dad had this mule firmly tied to a hitching rail, planning to spruce the animal up a bit prior to trading it off. They were clipping its mane when the mule grabbed down on Harry's thumb, clamped in his teeth, and bit down hard. That mule just wouldn't open his mouth. It took a long time before he could pry his teeth apart. By then, Dad's thumb looked pretty bad, Verne says. Harry debated about what to do and finally decided he'd let Dr. Spellman in Cedar Rapids take care of the injury, so they drove to town. All I can do is cut the thumb off, Spellman announced. That definitely wasn't the answer Harry wanted to hear. Hell, if I'd have wanted that done, I would have done it at home, he replied. Fix it. The doctor relented, surgically removed a section of bone from Harry's thumb, and eventually the wound healed, but that biting mule proved unforgettable, for the thumb fused solid and never functioned properly. The Upmiers had a nicer mule that was just right for work around the place, a pretty animal that could be sold on a regular basis, yet never leave the farm. The mule was blind, but she was well trained and easy to drive. Her most troublesome problem was that she was windy. Remember this one, Verne? Okay. She would do well for short distances, but then would gasp noisily as she tried to catch her breath. She had no problem with easy chores around the farm or certain types of field work, such as gathering corn stalks, where she had to start and stop frequently. If she did have an episode of respiratory distress, the situation can be remedied by clamping one's hands over her nostrils for a few moments, Verne recalls, and then she'd be fine. She was so pretty that she often caught the eye of the fellow stopping by the farm looking for a good deal. Her blindness was obvious, and potential buyers would be told that she just isn't right. But apparently they would think that Harry was just making some sort of excuse not to sell such an attractive animal. Occasionally some fellow would purchase her despite these vague warnings and would gleefully start down the road with his new prize. The buyer always reappeared shortly afterwards, his new mule in tow. One Sunday, we sold her 3 times, Verne said. She never got further than an eighth of a mile away before it started to gasp for breath, so each new owner promptly brought her back. Dad would sit down with a disgruntled buyer over a glass of wine and then trade another mule for her, getting $5 or $10 to boot in the process. The two men would have a good laugh over what a fine bargain a blind mule was and would part as friends. Eyes twinkling, that's Verne, isn't it? Eyes twinkling, Verne adds, she might have been blind and windy, but Dad made money every time he sold her, and she sure was an easy mule to sell. I just have one more piece here. A friend who couldn't be here today, a woman by the name of Carol Gogger, who Verne started in horses too many years ago, wrote a piece, and she said, in 1948, Verne introduced me to a big Palomino, part saddlebred horse he called Peppermint. I was only 10 years old at the time. After riding Peppermint on Saturday for $1 an hour, I begged Verne not to sell Peppermint to anyone else, but to save it for me until I could raise the $70 he wanted for the horse. It took me 4 years of babysitting and hiding the allowances my parents gave me for school lunch money. Yes, I went without lunches to save for that horse. Verne probably never knew what it would have done to me if I'd have sold that horse if he'd have sold the horse during those 4 years I spent waking every waking moment, thinking and planning and reading books and scrimping and saving to buy Peppermint. The day finally came in 1952. Would you believe the price was still $70? Verne not only made all my dreams come true that day, but he and Peppermint started me on a lifetime adventure that started riding livery horses and ended with me raising and training Lipizzans. Peppermint was a 5-gaited horse that started off a love affair with saddlebreds. I was fortunate to be able to ride and train and drive some really exciting saddlebreds for 25 years. From there I went to the Arab and Morgan world and then spent my last 25 training Lipizzan horses. But through the 50 years of being fortunate to make my living and what has always been my hobby, I never forgot the advice Verne gave to me at the beginning. Maybe one of the most important things he had was that the horse business, he said, was that the horse business was like a used car business. You could cheat everyone once and they'd never come back, or you could treat everyone fairly and they would come back again and again. Verne, I can't be with you today for this wonderful tribute, but I want you to know I've tried to live by those words you taught me. Try to repeat them with a fair dealing with the customer every time. I've also tried to teach every student and owner to treat animals with compassion, to value the horse's spirit, which is a God's given gift for all of us that love horses. Verne, thank you for Peppermint. Thank you for starting me on my 50 years in the horse world. I love you. Okay. Sandy, I think you had something? What I'm going to do then is if someone wants to just give a quick little talk or testimony or story, we're welcome to hear it. Well, we've got the Miracles people, my mistake. The Miracles in Motion program that goes here, along with the Kirkwood program. The first Kirkwood program was at Verne's stable with Verne's horses. He was also quite instrumental in the American Quarter Horse Association. So the Miracles people are going to make a little presentation to Verne on their behalf.
And I'm sure you remember Miracles in Motion. If you're attending this horse expo today, you likely have an interest or a passion for the horse. But few of us here can spend as much of our time with horses as we would like. It is the fortunate horse person who can step outside the house in the morning and be at work, feeding, grooming, tacking up, vetting, shoeing, riding, and training horses. Verne Upmier has lived and worked with horses all his life. Along the way, he has shared his love, knowledge, and respect for horses with others, as we've heard today. Nearly everyone in this area who has been in the horse world has met someone who rode or bought a first horse from Verne. It says a lot about a man who has been a horse trader, in that connotation of the word, but can still live and work in the same area all his life. Hundreds of children have experienced horses and hay rides at Upmier's stable. But about 15 years ago, one special rider made a different impact on Verne. Andy wasn't always connected with her world the way other children are, but it was obvious she loved her pony rides. Verne vowed she would always have a pony to ride at his place. That idea grew, and with Verne's steady and quiet support, Miracles in Motion was born. In the early years, Verne helped the program keep alive in countless ways, finding horses and ponies suitable for the riders, boarding the horses, providing Upmier's stables as a site for classes, equipment storage, and the annual ride-a-thon, and serving on the Miracles Board of Directors from its beginning to the present day. In Horseman's terms, to Miracles in Motion, Verne, you are foundation stock. Without his support, it is unlikely the fledgling program would have survived to grow into the expanded program it is today. It was Verne's unselfish sharing of what he had in life that we are honoring today. From 6 riders on borrowed horses the first year, Miracles in Motion now serves over 100 children and adults every year. They benefit physically, mentally, socially, and recreationally from weekly interaction with one of the most exciting animals on the earth. We've all heard the quote, "The best thing for the inside of a man is the outside of a horse." Sir Winston Churchill also said, "I say to parents, don't give your son money. As far as you can afford it, give him horses." No one ever came to grief, except honorable grief, through riding horses. No hour of life is lost that is spent in the saddle. This too applies to Verne Upmier. If you have it, it is for life. It is a disease for which there is no cure. You will go on riding even after they have to haul you onto a comfortable, wise old cob with feet like inverted buckets and a back like a fireside chair. From all the riders, the parents and families, the volunteers and the staff at Miracles in Motion, thank you, Verne Upmier, from the bottom of our hearts for sharing your enjoyment of horses with all of us. We have a small plaque here for you to Verne Upmier in appreciation for your countless acts of kindness and your support throughout the years. Thank you for helping make miracles happen. From the students, families, volunteers, and staff of Miracles in Motion.
Okay, for a few minutes if anyone...
I became head of the Department of Animal Science at the University of California, Davis. And one of the first meetings we had, meeting people, this lady came up who said she was the supervisor of the horse program, equestrian program for the students. And she said, "I heard that your wife is from near Ely, Iowa." And I said, "Yes, that's correct." And she says, "Well, I want you to know that I got my start with horses at Verne Upmier's." And you know, I cannot remember her name, I'm sad. But she was there at the University of California, Davis, and she says, you know, I learned more about horses there at Upmier's than I have since. One other instance is a student at Iowa State. Verne had a classmate, and I think a fraternity brother, by the name of Roy Cotman. And Roy Cotman came on to be dean of the College of Agriculture at Ohio State University. And once at a meeting, Roy says, I understand your wife is from near Ely. And I says, yes, that's correct. And he says, well, I have a friend there in Verne Upmier, and you give him my regards. So Verne is known much more in many more places than just around Ely and Cedar Rapids. I should also point out that my wife's ancestors, Valentin Friedrich Christoph Furmeister, came to the area down there, the Johnson-Lynn County line, in 1838, at the same time that Verne's ancestors came. And they have lived in that area for many, many years. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Charles Abraham from Cedar Rapids, and I just want to mention three things. First of all, though, I would like to thank, on behalf of the Horsemen in this area, Gene Wareheim, his family, Rachel and Nancy Wareheim, and all the individuals that made this possible. Events like this are what it's all about, everybody getting together, enjoying, and honoring a man like Verne. And plus the horse show. We're going to see several breeds, and we have not had, I don't believe we've had anything at Kirkwood here anyway, where we're going to see the diversity of horses that we're going to see here today and that you saw yesterday and things. So thank you very much. It's hard work. I noticed Rachel lost 10 pounds preparing for it, and she really has lost weight. So hopefully she'll be able to relax a little bit after this and get back to where she needs to be weight-wise. But all you guys, thank you very much. You guys, thank you. We also want to thank Kirkwood for allowing the Wareheims and the rest of the gang for having this event here. That's why we've got this facility here, and thank God we've got it. It's an absolutely extraordinary facility, probably one of the best in the country for things like this. It comfortably holds hundreds of people, an absolutely beautiful arena, and we're horsemen in this area are very, very, very fortunate to have a facility like this. So let's give Kirkwood a hand, please. Next thing I want to mention is I want to talk a little bit about Verne. And Verne's up here not just because of his love for horses, but his love for people. I sit back, every time I leave Verne's place, I treat a horse and I'm driving out and I go, now, what would I have been doing if my parents wouldn't have met Verne Upmier in the 60s? And this trickle-down thing has happened time after time. I don't know if I'd be in a factory working, or if I'd be, there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't know where I'd be, you know, or if I'd be an electrician or whatever, but I'm sure glad that Verne was around and I got to do what I got to do. And thank you for that, Verne. There's no doubt that there's hundreds and hundreds of individuals that, just like me, that he's impacted, and I could list tons and tons of them right now, but we don't have the time for that. I just want to mention a couple other things, and Verne is not only a great horseman, but he's a philanthropist. He's an extremely humble man, as most of you that know him realize. Gentle, caring person. And he's a humanitarian, most importantly. He worries about people, he thinks about people. He always has time to talk to you about things. And he'll sit there and talk to you about any type of problem you have. And that's just the kind of guy Verne is. And I can honestly say I respect Verne as much as I do anybody in this world. I honest to godly do, and we love him. I could go on and on raving about Verne, and you've all heard all the great things that he does, and there's no question and no doubt. But I just want to say, on behalf of Verne, my clinic is going to donate over 10 years $2,500 or $250 a year towards a scholarship in Verne's honor. And hopefully everybody else will fall into it and try and give something, even $1 or $2 a year will really make a difference. And a great guy like Verne deserves to be honored like that. And we'll make this, hopefully make this scholarship immortal here, and we'll have it go on forever and ever at Kirkwood. So thank you all very much for coming, and again, thank you, Wareheims, and thank you Verne, for being here.
Tomorrow person, you do it?
I think I can do it. Do I have to go up there? Okay, most of you have heard my voice almost all weekend, but now I'm nervous and scared, so I had to write it down. I came to the Verne scene late, but I did work for George Barta for a year, so I did get caught up on who some of the horse people around here were. And I just want to say that my first horse lived at Verne's, and I fell in with people who rode, so I really rode. And Verne told me if my gelding ever had that baby, I was going to be a rich woman. Some of my best memories were riding up on a snowy night under Verne's picture window and singing to him till he'd come out on the porch and chat with us. Okay. A few years ago, I was up at the top of the hill, and the moon was out, and the stars were up, and the horses were grazing, and I started to bawl because life couldn't stay the same. It wasn't going to stay the same. Verne, without a doubt, the best times of my life were spent on the back of a horse on your land. I want to say thank you.
Well, those of you who know me know that I like to keep my word. And my word was to Verne, I'd get him up and back in about 20, 30 minutes, and I haven't done that. So we need to get going with things. I would like to, I told Verne also that he didn't have to speak. We had to make a lot of bargains to get him here, and that was part of the bargain. I've on my word just a little bit already. I wonder, Verne, if you could just say hello to the folks. Would you like to hear Verne give you just a little talk?
Well, gee, I'm sure glad to be here today, and I do appreciate getting me up here. And I'm sure that a horse has been one of the most important things in my life and in the life of a lot of the other folks that I've known. Because he has a different understanding than what we do. But when you get to know him and he gets to know you, you have a great time with him. So I hope all of you will someday own a horse and have him become your best friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention. The scholarship pledging is right here in the place. We're going to start rolling. Thanks very much for coming.